Hey, Mortenax Blade here. Blade saw how volatile the life of a DPS was and decided, let's become one of the best characters in the game instead. This guy is an absolute beast in amping but does substantial damage too when built for it, a true sub-DPS support. And he will be bringing a fan favorite back from the dead in a big way. Let's check out how exactly with a kit overview, check out my Eidolon sims, then I'll tell you how to build him and what icons to use from my testing and calcs, and then we'll chat about what teams you can play him in. Like and sub if this helps you out, chat to any Blade lovers, and let's begin. Our new Bladey is yet another limited 5-star fire nihility, but this time isn't locked to break or being blind. Among base stats, his HP is quite high, which is perfect for what he wants to do, and his speed is also great, so no weird low stats to nerf him. When leveling him up, I would recommend his ultimate by far in priority, followed by his talent and skill for both energy and damage. His basics also aren't useless but are low in damage, so you can ignore them and focus on the first three. But now let's check out his monstrous kit. Let's quickly start with his basics and skill just so we know what they do. His basic is single target, gets better in his ult state, and interestingly taunts an enemy for 1 turn. This will be powerful in sustainer setups to take the heat off of your squishy 2k HP DPS. As for his skill, it consumes 10% of his HP and deals damage to all enemies, as well as dealing 4 bounces. He actually cannot use this outside of his ult state, but we'll get to that easily, or if he's 1 HP. And this skill requires HP instead of SP, making him SP neutral or positive. And so his most important ability is his ultimate, where he enters a powerful state that unlocks his whole kit. His ult will first inflict Balefire Bind onto all enemies for 2 turns, which counts as a 30% def reduction and 50% vulnerability effect. Then he will consume HP and deploy a zone, entering the Infinite Fury state. This state increases his crit rate and crit damage, so already we can see he won't just be a support. This state also unlocks his skill. Yes, you will have to get used to it, this guy cannot use his skill outside of the state. It also finally gives him a new ultimate in case you generate enough extra energy, which you will. This beautiful new ultimate is a 350% HP multiplier that can hit all enemies and is one of the strongest scaling abilities in the game. And then his whole kit revolves around this zone. For example, his talent lets allies inflict this Balefire Bind state with attacks during the zone. This first means uptime on his amping is near permanent and still decent in modes like Pure Fiction, where enemies will be constantly respawning. But this is also E2 Silverwolf in his base kit, and is absolutely insane for Acheron Ultimate Generation. Just like E2 Silverwolf, it unlocks so many potential teammates that can supercharge her, and we'll see those later. Also in this talent, every ally attack, including his own, will grant Blade charge up to 9 points, and at 9 he will consume the charge, regen 25 energy which scales with energy regen, and then use his skill for free, which is another 30 energy. It can't be used if he is 1 HP, which can actually save you at times, and it also counts as a follow-up attack. His 3 major traces are also all linked to that ultimate. His first lets him overflow by 80 energy. At an energy cost of 160, this means he is able to store 1.5 ultimates. This is pretty useful because of that large 55 plus energy generation from his free skill usage at 9 charges of his talent. It also regens his energy up to 75% of the total when the battle starts, very powerful, but also when the zone dispels. You should have max energy when it dispels if playing optimally, but it helps mistakes, and it could be used in cool ways that aren't mistakes, as if you have the means to generate 25% of his energy, you could ult, end zone, regain 75% of your ult for free, and then ult again immediately with said external energy. Next, his A4 increases the chance of being attacked by enemies, whilst the zone is active of course, and so with that high HP pool, he now offers some powerful survivability benefits to your team. It also decreases his damage taken by 50%, so he is an absolute tank, and also increases incoming healing by 50% in case you even need to run a sustain at that point. Because we need more, he also inflicts Balefire Bind when being attacked, and gains 1 charge when doing so. More charge is more free skills, so more damage, but also more debuff application. And when paired with the debuff application every time he is hit, knowing that he can taunt and has aggro up, well, you can imagine Acheron will be ulting so much quicker than ever before. Finally, his A6 buffs the team even more. During the zone, we get a 50% damage buff to all allies, and then an interesting switch buff where if there are other Nihility units in the team, we get a 75% ultimate damage buff to all allies. Hint hint. If there is only Bladey as a Nihility in the team, his damage gets buffed by 75% instead, and that's his whole kit getting that buff. This lets him pump out even more sub-DPS damage, or at that point, can even become his own carry. So, his ult zone in total maintains a debuff that reduces enemy defense by 30% and applies a 50% vulnerability debuff. The zone then triggers a state that buffs his own crit rate by 20% and crit damage by 60%, as well as giving him a crazy damaging ult. The zone also lets every ally attack apply a debuff, lets every ally attack generate charge for him for more attacks and more energy, it lets him get an aggro increase, damage reduction, and healing buff. It lets enemies' attacks generate charge and apply debuffs, and it also gives the whole team a 50% damage buff, and it also gives either a 75% ultimate damage buff to the team or a 75% damage buff to Blade. Not overloaded at all. But this zone cannot last forever. Well, it kinda can, but one sec. This zone's duration is based on a countdown timer that has a fixed speed of 70, much like Firefly's Complete Combustion, another Stellaron Hunter kit mechanic yoinked, and so you have 143 AVO goodness to use effectively. However, just like other countdowns, it will reset on AV wave resets like an MOC, so you can stall it out even longer if clearing correctly. Now, just like you can do with Firefly with enough kills or Robin with enough hits for energy, you can just ult when the countdown ends to immediately re-enter the state and reapply the zone. Since he has two ultimates unlike these two units though, you might be trigger happy and use his ult when it's up. But if you see you are nearing your countdown timer, please save the ult if you know you won't be able to regain 25% of his energy quick enough. Losing out on all those benefits from earlier is not worth that extra bit of damage most of the time. You could again potentially ult, end zone, and regain ult quick enough, but this would require large ally energy gen, as tuning your blade behind the countdown is not always ideal if you want a faster battery unit, and it can be ruined by things like Dance's advance forward. His basic alone also can't generate enough, so it would also still need enemy attacks or ally generation. To finish off his base kit, his technique is actually neat unlike many others, taunting all enemies for one turn and giving himself even more damage reduction, and this time for 2 turns. It is an attack, so it might mean your Acheron misses out for example, but it will be very useful in case of aggressive first waves in any sustainless team. But his full kit does not end there because this guy has some pretty strong eidolons. His E1 first decreases all enemies' res by 20%, already making it a top tier supportive E1. But then after using the extra skill from his talent, his countdown has its action delayed by 15%. And this doesn't hurt us unlike where other countdown delays could. It just means more uptime on his zone and state, which can be useful in less frequent attacking teams. Since we optimize to keep it up permanently anyway though, this won't always be that noticeable, but it can get us extra damaging ults. E2 then is just really cool, as it makes all ults now count as launching follow-up attacks. And so they can actually take follow-up damage bonuses and interact with follow-up based mechanics like the Juke set Acheron time. But this also means ASHVEIL's follow-up attack buffs work for ults too now. So enjoy ASHVEIL ults now getting 80% crit damage and like 200% damage from his A4 and A6. And enjoy Blade ults getting that 80% crit damage from Ashe A6. On top of that, the follow-up attack damage is increased by 75% in the team, which includes everyone's ults because of that first part, and also Blade's own extra skills, which count as follow-ups. If that wasn't enough, he also got a charge decrease from 9 to 7, and so we get even more extra attacks from Blade and more ultimates. And the more extra skills we get, the more charges we get for more extra skills. It's a big loop. More energy, more damage, more debuff applications, and if you weren't hitting it already, permanent zone uptime. And I mean, even his E4 is decent with another 50% damage buff to the whole team. It's hella diluted at this point, but better than most E4s. Finally, E6 ramps his charge generation to even higher heights, and so I hope you love seeing Blade's animations. We also get a unique 1.5 times boost to his second ultimate, which of course we will be spamming out even more with the amount of extra skills we're getting from this E6. This is such a gigantic damage increase to Blade overall. So here are my Eidolon simulations for Mr. Mortenax in an ASHVEIL Mortenax Tribbie team. Note that the performance of the Eidolons will vary a lot depending on the DPS used, as they are more synergistic with certain DPS. Do not use these simulations to say he improves every DPS by X amount, that's not how that works. The reason why the E2 is so gigantic here is because ASHVEIL is the main carry, and so everyone's ults are getting 75% damage from Blade E2, as well as 80% crit damage from ASHVEIL now that they count as follow-ups, So Blade's ults are getting a massive increase, and this is a dual DPS team. Then ASHVEIL's own ults get extra stacking damage percent from Gluttony as they count as follow-ups. And then Blade ults more often because of the charge reduction, which means an extra ASHVEIL ult too. In a quick fight, you might not see as big of an impact, but it should still be substantial and much better than Ash's personal verticals. This E2 is also massive for Acheron in case you're wondering. Anyways, finally onto builds. In 4.3, we will get a brand new set made just for Bladey that offers HP percent, crit damage to death reduced enemies, and team-wide damage percent. This is his de facto generalist set for all things damage and team amplification, and I recommend it for most people. And Longevous is just a worse version of the new set that you can use whilst farming for a temporary build. As always, we must mention our bird friend, and because an extra action can mean 1 to 2, sometimes even 3 extra attacks from him, which could be 1 to 3 debuffs for Acheron, or 1 to 3 attacks for ASHVEIL or HSR, it can be more commonly useful in optimized setups unlike some other Eagle setups that are way more conditional. There is finally a niche possibility of running Wuthering Guard, what a throwback, but this is run in specific sustainless world conditions, or I guess a long fight using a Dan PT team without Dan S1. The way it works is it enables a 1 HP Blade to act, heal up, and use his skill and follow-up skill as they cannot be used at 1 HP. Just use a healer, and if running sustainless, I feel like you can often kill before this even comes into play, and an enemy attack will slam dunk you out of your state and heal you up anyway. So for most people, again, stick to the new set. For planar ornaments, my favorite one will be Sprightly Vonwak, as you want his damage amplification and charge stacking up as soon as possible. Having to wait until your turn can make you miss out on a bunch of extra debuffs for Acheron, or attacks for other units, and damage from Blade and the team in general. The energy is also nice. However, if you really don't want to farm Vonwak, then opt for Bone for Blade damage, Duran if E2 Blade, or Lushaka for helping out a strong main carry whilst gaining a little energy boost. Main stats will be crit rate, speed boots, HP or damage orb, HP being stronger most of the time, and then energy or HP rope. In his best compositions, I much prefer an energy rope. His attacks are battering the main carry in some way, and battering them in turn charges his own attacks. If opting for a more supportive focus build, then energy becomes even more important as his damage contribution drops. As a stat goal, you can aim for 5000 to 7000 HP depending on your light cone. Your crit rate should be 100% in combat, and so if no other ally crit rate buffs are present, that will be 80% pre-combat as he self-buffs by 20%. For your crit damage, you can aim for 120 to 140%, and speed 134 will be the default and easily achievable goal. If you have a dance in the team, you can go lower. But Blade's damage is very good for a support when built like this, especially with his favorite friend ASHVEIL, where his DPS is comparable to him in 3 targets. But many teams these days contribute lots of team buffing that he can make use of. If the DPS is more selfish, or you're running a hyper carry with Blade as more of a secondary amper or pseudo sustain, then his damage won't be as substantial but still worth building into, and more actions might not do anything for the DPS. If said DPS cares for Blade actions, or you're running him on a cone that needs EHR or speed like Rezo or Cypher's cone, feel free to put some EHR and speed into him at the cost of some HP and crit damage substats. Anyways, onto Lycones, where we have his beautiful signature artwork. It grants a large base HP, then 30% HP on top, then 20 energy for the wearer once per wave. And then it gives a team-wide 30% crit damage and an extra 30% crit damage to the wearer after applying Purgatory from his skill. You might say, Guoba, this is vulnerability, and I will say no, it is not. Stat-wise, it is a chunky cone, and for a carry-focused Blade, it's a powerful pickup. But the less damage Blade contributes in the team, the weaker this becomes, and some teams won't even care for the crit damage. The energy is really nice for immediate ramp up for a first turn ult, but after that, the energy isn't important, and you can do the first turn ult with tutorial, or you can just get hit with his taunt technique. It can finally be nice in some funny cases where you actually have too much death reduction, like with Ult Rail Mortenax Blade, but that's niche. So I don't think you need to pick this up, and so I recommend E1 above S1 as it offers quality of life, better and more universal buffing, and it gets you closer to that juicy E2. For other Lycones, Cypher's Cone is similar in power if you get him up to 170 speed. In an ASHVEIL team, it's especially nice thanks to how strong death reduction scales at this point. You lose out on a lot of Blade damage, but the debuff and actions for ASHVEIL can help mitigate this. It's also the strongest damage increase he can give for other carries, especially since some can't even use the crit damage from his SIG. Resolution is then a budget version, but again universal for all damage types, just way more finicky with uptime, but Blade attacks a lot so it isn't that bad. This needs even more EHR than Cypher's Cone as well, which truly drops Blade's damage. And Holiday Thermae is a higher uptime but weaker version of Resolution and has the same EHR issues. Finally, I'd recommend Tutorial. If you want maximum attacks for your main DPS, this is very powerful to do so, and thanks to the extra attacks it would provide, it can make up for no damage passive. I liked it a lot. With an Eagle set, it becomes even stronger. And now it's time to finish with teams. With 50% vulnerability, 30% def reduction, 50% damage, and 75% ult damage if another Nihility is present, Blade offers some of the highest, if not the highest, amplification in the game on one-to-one comparisons with other supports. Comparing only raw amp is a very rookie mistake though, as utility is how supports gain value, like Robin offering a full team advance, Cyrene giving max energy, Tribbie dance spam and hit frequency for example. Blade, however, has plenty of utility. First off, in the form of his own damage contribution in his best teams, and still decent power in many teams because of his high raw multipliers and buffs. But the real utility that I think will make him a mainstay is that survivability. In fights that aren't too aggressive, he can keep a team safe with his kit pretty well, and if versus single target enemies, it should be a breeze. He feels like an E4 welt at E0 in both amp and pseudo sustaining. I feel like for casual players, he can even feel easier to use. He can taunt enemies with his basic, he has increased aggro if not, and he takes 50% reduced damage, and he's built full on HP. If he ever dies, it just makes him leave his ult state and he can just re-ult to enter again. If you need to survive longer, just don't use his skills as much. Having a top tier amp is already good, as replacing a weaker support with him is going to be a damage increase, and then if he synergizes with the DPS, it gets even crazier. But if you can comfortably replace the sustain with him, your damage potential goes through the roof. Now, before we go on to teams, ASHVEIL and Blade is one of the strongest dual DPS teams we have in 4.3, and because of that base strength and the fact that they buff, I reckon we'll see them being used in a wheelchair fashion for a lot of simple old crit DPS, E2 especially. Anyways, he ranges from a powerful universal slot in for almost any team, to a top tier sustainer spot to I think every team, to a Dahlia tier unit for one specific lovely emanator. For some example teams that we won't talk about more later, we have Evanescence, Yaoguang, Elation MC Blade. She can't use the damage percent buffs very well, but she sure can use the universal amp and the survivability benefits for a 4th slot buffer akin to E4 Welt. We have Facial Blade ASHVEIL, and you might say she does nothing in this team, but her attack frequency is important, and if you want to use her, you can use her. A hyper team of ASHVEIL is still stronger, but you'll love playing this team if you love pretty animation spam. The Herter, Erudition, Tribbie, Bladey is fantastic thanks to Blade's insane attack frequency, especially when paired with Tribbie. The Erudition unit is likely spamming out attacks for the Herter already, so why not battery 2 DPS at the same time? As a tip, since we're here, put him on the 4th slot of your team if running sustainless, so that he can tank blast hits away from your main DPS. Anyways, let's talk more in depth about a few specific examples, starting with the biggest winner, Acheron. Unlike Dahlia that is tied to break, Blade can buff any team and then also has Dahlia tier benefits for Acheron. He took the OP E2 Silverwolf add-on from her Nova player that she loved. He took a similar Jiaoqiu debuff effect where if he takes hits, he applies debuffs. Not as consistent, but still good. And then he has high attack frequency on top, and the best amping in the game for Acheron, and he provides survivability benefits and damage. It's like if Jiaoqiu could sustain, debuff more, do damage, and amp over twice as much. You can expect your Acheron team with Mortenax to double in power at least versus any other Nihility at equal investment. Jiaoqiu on release was an obvious big pull for Acheron with his quality of life, OK buffs back then, and debuff frequency, but we were innocent back then and didn't know how much all the characters would need to be at their peak again, and how strong supports could get. Cypher was an upgrade over Jiaoqiu, but as we knew, not big enough to be a high value pull for Acheron. And the E2 Silverwolf Nova Flare was a big boost over any Nihility, but required a whole ton of pulls for an old unit. E0S0 Blade mogs everyone by far, and is a substantial upgrade to even E2 Silverwolf. So if you love Acheron and want to use her, I definitely actually recommend pulling Bladey. And ASHVEIL of course must get a mention. It seems instead of ASHVEIL waiting for a main DPS, he is instead a dual DPS if not main DPS himself, with Blade as his dual/sub DPS. They really feel like full-up modernized. With ASHVEIL Blade Tribbie, you have one of the most satisfying and one of the strongest compositions in the game. Everyone is attacking constantly, and they all scale their energy on ally attacks, which in turn gives them more attacks for a crazy feedback loop. Even though ASHVEIL is already top tier, the power gain he gets from Bladey is kind of crazy so soon. And the final team composition I'd like to talk about is the Memo team actually. He has HP Drain in his kit and scales on HP, so unlike most DPS, they get a bonus synergy with him as they can utilize the Drain and buff his damage slightly more than other compositions. I wouldn't necessarily say to pull Blade as an Everknight or Cyrene replacement for Castoris, although in certain environments he can replace them, but you could pull him as a way to split the team. A big part of the power of the Memo Sprite team is the Memo Split, where you can use your Castoris, Everknight, Cyrene, Hyacinth Dream Team and split it into Castoris, Hyacinth and Everknight, Cyrene, giving you 2 powerful teams out of 2 to 3 slots needed in endgame. With Blade, you can have a very nice Castoris, Blade, Tribbie, Hyacinth comp on one side, and Everknight, Cyrene, RMC, sustain / support if clearing fast enough. This was already possible with some supports, but Blade is the best unit to do it now. Even if not replacing Everknight, being able to substitute Cyrene means she can go in another Krysos Air team. Not bad at all. So let me know if you're pulling for Blade, and let me know what you think of him down below. I am super excited to see him on live and see everyone getting to test him out. He is so powerful. Like and sub if this video helps at all, and please be sure to share to others that might need it. Thank you, thanks to my amazing YouTube members, and have a Guoba day.